Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Friday, April 28, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A Jackson, Mississippi family whose loved one was tased 80 times by cops. They are suing that police department. Keith Murriel's family, they're still waiting for the body cam video of the night that he died. Their family attorney will join us right here on today's show. Also, Just Leadership USA is launching in D.C. We'll be joined by the president and CEO to discuss how they plan to impact the political landscape. Folks, yesterday I was in Prairie View, Texas, for a news conference with the Prairie View A&M Alumni Association as they made a series of demands to the Texas A&M University Board of Regents who oversees PV. They said they will even look at suing the state to get PV to have its own board of trustees. We'll show you what their demands are. Also, we continue paying tribute to the great Harry Belafonte. We'll be joined today by actor and singer and activist Hill Harper, Glenn Turman, and also Reverend William Barber. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics.
A Jackson, Mississippi family whose loved one died on New Year's Eve is suing the police department for his death. Keith Murriel was the 41-year-old father of two, died after they say he was tased some 80 times by police officers. He died following an incident with officers who was called to an extended stay motel for a non-emergency. Officers said Murriel was experiencing a medical emergency when they arrived. He died a short time later. An independent autopsy conducted by a highly regarded medical examiner found Keith died due to the officer's restraint, multiple conductive energy device discharges, known as tasers, and positional asphyxia. The family attorney contends officers Willis, McCarty, and Land tased Keith over 80 times. That attorney is Daryl Washington. He joins us right now from Dallas. Daryl, glad to have you here. So Daryl, walk us through this here. You say he was tased 80 times. The cops say it was a non-emergency. What the hell requires being tased 80 times?
There was absolutely nothing required him being tased 80 times, Roland. I mean, with the video, you would see that Keith was totally compliant with the officers. In fact, when the officers tased Keith, he was pleading for them to please stop. There was absolutely no reason for these officers to have used this force. But what's even more egregious about this case is the fact is after they tased Keith at least 80 times, they placed him in handcuffs and they put him in the back of this vehicle, although they know that he was unresponsive. And the sad thing about it, Roland, is that these police officers left Keith in the back of that police cruiser at least an hour before they even got help to come out there and see about him. And by the time paramedics arrived at the scene, Keith was already dead. So this was just a horrible, horrible case.
So you contend that they failed to render medical aid. He clearly needed it.
He needed medical aid. I mean, and they knew that he was unresponsive. They knew when they put him in the back of that police cruiser that he was not responding whatsoever. But Roland, here's what the worst thing that happened. There's a supervisor that came out to the scene. This supervisor did not step out his police vehicle at all. They told the police, they told the sergeant what was going on, and these guys just basically laughed about the situation. Keith was left in the back of that vehicle. He received absolutely no medical attention at all. And that video is going to shine a bad light on the city of Jackson, which is the reason why they don't want to release it. Based on witness accounts, Roland, these officers were using language that you and I would never use out at the scene, and they, quite frankly, did not care at all. These officers just seemed like somebody that was just pulled off the street and placed in police uniforms, and this is just a horrible case. Now, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, they are leading this, but okay, it's April 28th. This took place on New Year's Eve. The police chief says they'll release the video when the investigation is over. We all know how this works. If that video showed Keith did something awful, it would already be out. It would already be out. It's no question. And Roland, here's the problem. The mayor got on, he did an interview, and he said that he disputed what the chief of police said about the cause of the incident. Now, the mayor said that he wanted this body cam footage released. MBI would not release the body cam footage until their investigation was concluded. That investigation has now been concluded. Why are they not releasing this video? I mean, and we know they're not releasing the video because there's just no justification for what these officers did to Keith. And I know, Roland, for a fact, when the public sees that video and when they see how this man was pleading for help, you talking about somebody who's 6'3". Keith did not try to assault these officers. He did not try to do anything to anybody that was around the scene. This was just a guy that was just begging for the officers to please stop. And I know that Jackson Police Department does not want that video to get out because it's just that bad. And so you say Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, he wants to release, but the police chief is holding off. The police chief has not said anything. Even when the mayor came out and said what the chief of police said in that memo was not accurate, because, you know, as you said earlier, that the chief of police said that they would respond to a medical emergency. That's what he said. And when the mayor came out and said
That's not consistent. Not one time did this chief come out and try to clarify what he actually put into that memo. And we know, Roland, this is all about transparency. And we know if this case involves someone harming a Jackson police officer, that we would all know what happened. And we just want that consistency. And this is not what we get in this case. This is not what we get throughout the country. These body cams were designed for transparency. They were designed to let the public and more importantly, the family know exactly what happened to their loved one. And it's just sad that we're about to go into May now, and the family still has not gotten one word from the mayor, one word from the chief of police. And this is why we had no choice but to move forward with this lawsuit.
I swear this is probably about the sixth or so story we've done the last couple of months that's coming out of Mississippi.
Mississippi is bad, Roland. The family wanted me to tell you, they wanted me to thank you for covering this story because the family realizes that there's nothing that we can do to bring Keith back. But what we're trying to do with this case, Roland, is to try to stop this bad practice. There's just no reason for this to go on. Police officers take an oath to serve and protect. They don't take an oath to serve and attack. And we're trying to change the system. And the only way you can change the system is by taking these cases on to court and having them to produce their documents, having them produce their training records. And we know right now there's a shortage of police officers in Jackson, Mississippi. There's a shortage of police officers throughout this country. So what's happening is they're taking people off the street and they're not properly training them. And when you don't properly train someone and you give them a gun and a license to kill, these are the results that we get. And this is just something that just needs to stop.
Well, I mean, this is why we do what we do, because unfortunately, very few of these cases rise to the attention of mainstream media on the national level. And the bottom line is these families want answers. And so if we're able to do it on this show, put it on social media, it generates the attention, because all too often, again, it takes a Herculean effort for national media to go, oh, now we'll pay attention.
Right, and you're absolutely right, Roland. And I tell people all the time, for every George Floyd or for every Tyree Nichols case, there are thousands of these type of cases that people never hear about. So, you know, we need you to continue to let people know that these cases exist. And this is a major problem. This is not just a one-time situation. And as you say, Jackson, Mississippi is extremely bad. And I think Jackson has gotten to the point now, Roland, that people really need to come in and look into what's going on in this city, because this cannot continue. You cannot continue to harm people the way they've been doing.
All right. Attorney Darrell Washington, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me, Roland.
Folks, got to go to a break. We'll be back. Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. YouTube, folks, hit that like button. Also, folks, download our app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One. You can also watch us on Amazon News. If you go to Amazon Fire, click Amazon News. You can watch our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week Black Star Network live streaming channel. Support us in what we do as well. Of course, we want you to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do what we do. And so send check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, or Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Lost my daughter. I didn't know where she was. So I had to figure out how to survive, how to eat, how to live. I don't want to go into the details because she's here, first of all. She may not want me telling that story. But possession of her, the family broke down, fell apart. I was homeless. I had to figure out, I didn't have a manager or an agent or anybody anymore, and I'm the talent. So I got to figure out how to be the agent. I had to figure out how does business work.
Hi, I'm Anthony Brown from Anthony Brown and Group Therapy.
Hi, I'm BB Winans.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks. When we look at, again, these stories, unfortunately, they happen all too often. And what we end up with is, frankly, talks about settlements. My panel today is Matt Manning, civil rights attorney. Glad to have him here. He's out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Michael Imhotep hosts the African History Network show, Detroit, Michigan. Kelly Bethea, communication strategist out of D.C. Matt, to Daryl's point, I mean, we can go on and on and on over and over and over again about these cases, and the public really doesn't understand how often this happens. When Samuel Sengawe did their research, talking about the number of people killed by cops last year was the highest ever, people thought the aftermath of the death of George Floyd was going to change things, but it hasn't changed things. You still have, only thing that's really changed are higher settlement payouts.
Yeah, nothing's changed, especially the law. I mean, that's the biggest problem with it, is not only how frequently it happens and how many people are injured by encounters with the police, but how difficult it is to vindicate that. In fact, I know Rep. Ayanna Pressley up in Massachusetts has been at the spearhead of this, of talking about ending qualified immunity. We talk about it a lot on the show, but not only has there been an increase in the number of people who have been hurt, but there hasn't been any diminution in how easily they can vindicate their rights. And that's what makes this especially difficult for people to understand. I mean, I do this day in and day out, and virtually anything that happens to my client, it's going to be difficult to vindicate their rights unless there's been a case just like theirs in the past, and the circuit has recognized that that is considered a constitutional violation. If that doesn't happen, then it's like climbing Mount Everest to hold cities and municipalities accountable in these cases. And it's especially difficult because it's not only happening to black people, it's happening to people of all colors. And the lack of accountability on police is really frustrating, because some of my clients are police officers to whom this happens when they're off duty, and they can't understand how this could happen to them. And I tell them, it could happen to you, because if we don't change policing overall, if somebody doesn't know you have a badge on, then you're in the same situation as all these other civilians who are subject to potential force and unjustifiable force. So it's really a sad state of affairs. But this is precisely why we as citizens have to galvanize and require that our legislatures change the accountability so that people can be held accountable for this.
Michael, again, this thing spans Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. It spans all across that state. It goes to Florida. It goes to Texas. I mean, it goes to the Midwest. It goes to the Southeast. It goes to the Southwest. It goes to the West. I mean, this literally is a national problem. And unfortunately, you've got Republicans who now control the House. They're not going to move on any legislation. It's a narrow margin for Democrats in the Senate. They don't have the 60 votes as well. But this is still why public pressure. And I know people out there will tell me, oh, man, I hear you, but, protest has done nothing. But one of the reasons why they go quiet is when they don't see people in the streets, when they don't see mass protests, when they don't see mobilizing to fight this.
Yeah, Roland, it all comes together. I've heard you talk about it on the show before, the difference between Republicans controlling the House of Representatives, the 118th Congress, and Democrats controlling the House of Representatives was about, if I remember correctly, Roland, about 7,000 votes in a handful of races made the difference. And unfortunately, many of our people don't understand how to bring into existence the policies that they keep talking about on social media that they want. All this turns on the vote. This is why this is why the voter suppression is so great. If you just look at what came out of North Carolina today, they talked about how, if I remember correctly, New York Times and Washington Post is dealing with the gerrymandering from Republicans. Okay, I don't know if you're going to touch on that at all today, Roland. It just happened in the past 4 hours. The articles have come out, and they're reversing.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So I won't jump ahead, but yeah. So So
I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah. So all this comes together at the same time. When we look at the majority of control over policing is at the state and local level. One of the things that also has to happen, the attorney Daryl Washington just said that it seems like they have just taken people off the street and hired them. Okay, and a lot of these people are irresponsible. We need many African Americans with the correct mindset, not the wrong mindset, because all kinfolk ain't skinfolk, okay? All skinfolk aren't kinfolk. With the correct mindset to also apply for these jobs in the police departments, as well as run for public office also, because all this turns on the vote. The politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth upon resources. Everything we want it deals with politics. So this is why this fight continues, and we have to be more educated and engaging in this fight.
Kelly?
I mean, I agree with both panelists here. It is an epidemic of police brutality, and it's got to stop. And it starts with a multifaceted approach. You have to vote the correct people in who are on our side of this issue so that you have policies in place that prevent stuff like this from happening. You need, frankly, an overhaul of the culture of policing in this country so that when new cohorts come in, they don't have people in place training them into the bias that causes things like this to happen. You need community policing. And we've talked about that on your show ad nauseum. It's a multifaceted approach. I am extremely sorry for this man, but all of this has got to stop. But it is a multifaceted approach in order to do so.
Folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We'll talk about politics, the battle to change what's happening in this country. We'll discuss what Republicans did today in North Carolina, which is absolutely abysmal and could have devastating impact on black folks. And the Prairie View A&M alumni, they are saying to the Texas A&M Board of Regents, make some changes or we are going to break away from the Texas A&M system. We'll show you and tell you all about that. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
This is Judge Mathis.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mac Wild.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now. Yee.
Folks, we always talk about if you want to change what's happening politically, you've got to mobilize and organize. Well, that's what Just Leadership does. Joining us right now is Deanna Hoskins. She's the president and CEO of Just Leadership USA. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Roland.
All right, so for our audience, tell them exactly what does Just Leadership USA do?
So Just Leadership USA is the only national tax-exempt organization focused on empowering people who have been most impacted by the criminal justice system. So we provide training around education around policies that continue to oppress their community. Moving into this weekend, we're actually mobilizing on a federal level around a Just Us Coordinating Council to address the issues and policies that have allowed the discriminatory practice that keeps us out of housing, employment, and medical opportunities after we have served our time.
Okay, so you say you're organizing, and so, okay, but where is that? Just in D.C.? Is it all 50 states? So walk us through that.
Thank you. So no, we're launching in D.C., but our members come from all 50 states, including Washington, D.C., to focus on those policies. There are a lot of administrative policies. When you talk about criminal justice, people think you have to do legislative change. There are actually policies on the books that are not implemented properly that is preventing us. One of those is the background checking companies. Background checking companies are regulated like credit reporting companies, but there's no accountability to the hundreds of them who have mobilized and allowed the fear to employers around people's criminal record. And I always use myself as an example. I've received a pardon from a governor. My record has been expunged. But if I apply for a pardon today, 24 years after my last criminal activity, my criminal record still comes up because there is no accountability for those companies to actually go back and clean up their records. So when we're moving into this, we served our time. And if you're a country that says we believe in a Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations, why am I still serving time once I'm released? And I'm 24 years removed from that last interaction with the criminal justice system.
So you talk about your members. How many members across the country? Do you have chapters? Walk us through that.
So right now we have 1,500 members across the country, and our goal is to build chapters of this. One of the things we want to do, Roland, I think is the biggest thing about this, formerly incarcerated have never had a presence or a voice nationally. Typically, organizations push reforms that impact our lives, and they kind of work with us to help push that reform. But when it comes to the carve-outs, the redlining that happens in Congress, the things that actually impact us in our communities, we have no power to talk about. So what we said is, we no longer want to be a part of other people's table. We want to build our own table and set the agenda, because there are actually ways to do this. And then how do we start building chapters in the states where our leaders who are joining us this weekend come from, so that we can start moving forward? And I kind of look at it as resembling the NAACP, AARP. Those organizations have a national presence and a national agenda, but they also move local chapters to move around state policies as well that impact them.
Questions from our panel. Kelly, you first.
Launching tomorrow, the 29th. Congratulations on that. That's a huge deal. My question to you is, what do you expect out of this event? And also, when it comes, even though you are launching, technically speaking, tomorrow, has there been any progress within your organization to lead to this point? Do you have any testimonies so far?
Thank you for that, Kelly. And yes, So at the top of the Biden administration, Just Leadership released our national roadmap. And it was a set of recommendations to the administration of actions they can take without legislative movement that would impact the lives of people who are directly impacted. And what we've seen last year in April and just today, released from the Biden-Harris administration, has things that have come from our roadmap and also listening sessions. One of the things was accessing and removing a barrier, discriminatory practices around housing. We saw Secretary Fudge actually release rulemaking that is actually pushing out regulations to housing authorities across this country to say you no longer have a blanket policy to say people with criminal backgrounds can't get into housing. In fact, we're going to set the regulations of how you actually identify people who get into housing. We saw access through CMS that actually allows for the enrollment into Medicaid 12 months prior to release. One of the things we know, the lack of correctional health care inside the correctional facility, people, especially Black and brown people, are leaving prison with chronic illnesses, but not having access to medical care once they leave prison. So now they can enroll 12 months before. Another one that's huge that's been on the books since '94 is the SNAP TANF benefits, which is the food stamp, saying that people convicted of drug offenses in certain states cannot have access to apply for those food benefits. And if you're an individual who's coming out of prison, you're indigent, you're trying to get on your feet, public assistance is a huge supporter in helping a person stabilize. So now pushing out regulations to states around that federal funded program. One of the things, Kelly, that I really, when you talk about evidence, we're seeing this movement. People think just get them jobs, pass this law, release from prison. I can be released from prison, but if I'm still blocked out of a market of economic mobility, if I'm blocked out of a basic human need of housing, how do I have the basic foundations that's needed for every human, even with those without a criminal record, to actually launch from? So we're excited that things have been built off of our roadmap, which you can actually go to our website and see where we update on what the administration has done.
Michael.
Hey, Deanna, quick question for you. When it comes to felony disenfranchisement, we know historically this has been a way to suppress the African-American vote coming from the state level, and especially in southern states, whereas states like, say, Vermont and Maine and Vermont, convicted felons can actually vote from prison, okay? How do you go about convincing state officials to change state laws when it comes to felony disenfranchisement?
Thank you for that, Michael. And that's always been the challenge, right? Because what we do know is the criminal justice system, as Michelle Alexander has told us a while back, criminal records have been utilized to disenfranchise and recreate those Jim Crow laws. So you are fighting for individuals to have access to just democracy, voting rights. So we have to keep pushing this. And one of the things that I really focus on is the ability to see the human dignity and value the individuals. But you're right, we continue to not only marginalize, but also what we see is when voting rights are restored or expanded, we start to see the redlining that actually continues to exclude those votes for certain people in certain areas.
All right, thank you.
Matt?
Deanna, thank you for doing God's work. You are truly doing really important work, and I appreciate it. I actually have two questions. So the first question is, do you envision a litigation element to this? And if so, how can myself and any other lawyer be involved? Because I would like to be involved. And secondly, do you take any nominations for people who should be a part of the JCC? And I ask because my dearly departed brother, Louis Conway in Austin, was really making great inroads for people who have been justice impacted. And there's some people connected with his campaign that I think could be extremely helpful if you haven't already connected with them.
Thank you for that. So one of the things that we started this, we're launching this with our members who have graduated Just Leadership, have been a part of Just Leadership. But the one thing we wanted to say This is open to the 70 million of us who have a criminal background. We are powerful in numbers, right? We have to create a movement. And how do you start? You have to start somewhere. So the people who we knew we had in our circle, other people, Alliance for Safety and Justice has members, Florida Rights and Restoration has members that are coming in, the Clean Slate Initiative. So this is open to everyone, but we want to strategize together and mobilize. So I don't want this to feel like this is a club of certain people have access. This is about all of us because we're all hindered. And thank you. Louis Conway was actually an alumni of Just Leadership who went through our program as well. But when you talk about the litigation, that's where I think we have to move to. We're going to have to move to that level. We're going to have to actually push states. What we're seeing happening even in the states, when a person is in jail, pretrial service, those jails are not allowing people to vote. And because you haven't been convicted of a crime, you have not lost your right to vote. But we haven't been able to push sheriffs in localities. So I would love to work with you, strategize with you of how we get to start moving to actually have access to our rights that are ours. And I'll close with this on that one. This was a vision. And I think a lot of times we wait on people to do something for us, and we just have to be willing to have the courage to lean in and walk while scared and say, we're no longer going to be quiet. We're just no longer going to be quiet. You've already taken my rights. You've incarcerated a country, and you continue to oppress and marginalize us. And what we see in the streets doing uprisings is a voice of people who have not been heard. So we're going to utilize our voice, we're going to elevate our voice. And at this time, I'm at a point, what do we have to lose?
All right. Well, Deanna, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Good luck with the launch tomorrow, and we look forward to the work you guys are doing.
Thank you, Roland. I appreciate you.
Thanks a bunch, folks. When we come back from this break, Prairie View A&M University alumni make it clear they want to see some changes when it comes to the governance of the university from the Texas A&M Board of Regents. They also want a Prairie View graduate on that Board of Regents. They've never had one in its history. Folks, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network, live from Houston. Back in a moment.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. We look at the history of emancipation around the world, including right here in the United States, the so-called end of slavery. Trust me, it's a history lesson that bears no resemblance to what you learned in school. Professor Chris Manjapra, author, scholar, amazing teacher, joins us to talk about his latest book, Black Ghost of Empire, The Death of Slavery and the Failure of Emancipation. He explains why the end of slavery was no end at all, but instead a collection of laws and policies designed to preserve the status quo of racial oppression.
The real problem is that the problems that slavery invented have continued over time. And what reparations are really about is saying, how do we really transform society, right? And stop racial violence, which is so endemic.
What we need to do about it on the next installment of The Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we talk about a hard, cold fact. Not all healthcare is created equal in this country, especially if you're a person of color.
So many of us, Black families, we rely upon each other heavily. A lot of us aren't necessarily sure how to best communicate with our healthcare providers.
How to take charge and balance the scales. Your life may depend on it. That's next on A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins.
Hey, I'm Deion Cole from Blackish.
Hey, everybody, this is your man, Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
Brianna Brianna Robinson has been missing from Davenport, Iowa since March 22nd. The 16-year-old is 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighs 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Brianna Robinson should call the Davenport, Iowa Police Department at 563-326-7979, 563-326-7979. Folks, yesterday I was in Prairie View, Texas, covering a news conference from the Prairie View A&M Alumni Association. You might remember the letter we read where Dr. Ruth Simmons resigned as president of Prairie View before she was to officially retire. Well, she's had a number of interviews, has had some choice words for the Texas A&M Board of Regents, and has actually called on Prairie View alumni and its students to step up and demand more to ensure that university is protected as it relates to its mission of educating black students. Well, the alumni and students gathered yesterday in the Memorial Student Center to announce a series of items they want from Texas A&M Board of Regents, including demands from the governor of Texas, Republican Greg Abbott, to appoint a Prairie View graduate to the Board of Regents. They've never had a PD graduate on the Texas A&M Board of Regents in its history. Here is some of that news conference.
The National Alumni Association of Prairie View A&M University is calling for immediate action right now to ensure that our university is treated fairly and is provided with resources it needs to truly become an institution of the first class, just like Texas A&M University and the University of Texas. Towards this goal, the National Alumni Association of Prairie View A&M University will be creating a sesquicentennial commission to study the matter of Prairie View A&M University succeeding, separating from the Texas A&M University system as a potential step in the right direction. Right. The National Alumni Association also calls for the following actions, but not limited to. Number one, increasing funding for Prairie View A&M University that matches that of other Texas institutions of the first class. Number two, amending the state law to allow Prairie View A&M University to access 1/3 share of the available university funds interest from the permanent university fund. Most of you don't know, if you read the Texas State Constitution, there are only 3 first institutions. There are only 3 tiers. Texas, University of Texas, Texas A&M University, and Prairie View A&M University. For as the PUF fund, the interest on the PUF fund from the availability university funds, University of Texas get 2/3. Texas A&M get 1/3. We are a first-class institution in the state of Constitution, just like Texas, just like A&M. Number 3, ensuring permanent representation for Prairie View A&M University on the Texas A&M System Board of Regents and all relevant Texas A&M University system committees. Number 4, developing the surrounding city of Prairie View to create a vibrant and thriving community for students, faculty, and residents, so that students don't have to travel down the road to Sci-Fair. If you ever been to Bryan College Station, it looks like a miniature Houston, Texas, and it's the same land grant. Started at the same time with Prairie View. There's no way that the city of Prairie View should be looking the way that it's looking today. Number 5, creating a school of public policy for this university to increase the broad pattern of democracy to produce vibrant and thriving communities. We holding them accountable what's already written down in the state constitution and in the Texas Higher Education Code, title number 3, subchapter B, where it lists Prairie View. Number 6, investing in research and faculty development programs at Prairie View A&M University to promote innovation and technological advancement. Number 7, fulfilling outstanding programmatic and building commitments, fully funding the state-of-the-art facility that can host the Texas Institute of the Preservation of History and Culture of our university, and the establishment of a full-service and nationally significant African American Museum of Texas at Prairie View A&M University that is already called out in the Higher Education Code. Number 8, implementing a juvenile crime prevention center in all Texas counties to receive agency status. Establishing a fully accredited medical school here at the university to prepare students for entry to medical professions. Yes. Number 10, carrying out the university's mission to support the Black communities in the rural and urban areas. That's what Prairie View was created to do. Number 11, executing the university's original mission by making the extension program an agency and not a program. We have the agriculture extension program here. It should be an agency. If you're an agency, you can receive money through the government, allowing us to be in every county in the state. Number 12, and they're not limited to these actionable items, making Prairie View A&M University a Sea Grant, a Space Grant, and a technology institution of the first class. It amazed me, Texas A&M started at a land grant, but now they are Sea Grant. They are Space Grant. Well, Prairie View is a first-class institution also. We are a flagship institution just like them. PWIs, they got started in 1862, and perhaps Frank gonna correct me if I get it wrong, but they started in 1862 as a land grant. They're getting their money. They're getting their money. I think that the federal government gave Texas A&M $50 million, where the state of Texas gave them $196 million. And so we as alums, we have to stay focused. I challenge you, go read the Texas State Constitution. Go read Title III of higher education. Everything that we're trying to hold them accountable is already written down. But we have not, I'm talking about the National Alumni Association, been in existence for 121 years. We have not addressed this from a political standpoint. Now is the time.
That's a political standpoint. What about a legal standpoint? So Alvin Chambliss used to be at Texas Southern, led the lawsuit against the state of Mississippi, that historic funding. $577 million settlement in Maryland. Tennessee State is fighting for their money. And so are you also demanding a state committee do an audit that has Prairie View been historically underfunded and determine what that number is, and will you consider suing the state of Texas?
Yes. The answer to that is yes. You want to elaborate on that some more, Frank?
Yes, we're going to take the same actions that would. Yes, the national.
And folks are watching, so state your name.
My name is Frank Jackson. I serve as the government relations officer with the National Alumni Association.
Go ahead.
Yes, the National Alumni Association is committed to take whatever action is necessary for us to receive our fair funding. That includes legal action, just as we had to do during the OCR settlement agreement, and that yielded some returns on that action. But we need to go further and demand what we need to do. When we take this kind of legal action, we seem to get people's attention, and we start getting what's rightfully due for these students here at this great university.
And for the folks who don't know about that OCR settlement, explain that.
That's the Office of Civil Rights settlement. It was a settlement, and it came out of the Ayers case, and they said there were vestiges of de jure segregation still evident in both Prairie View and Texas Southern University, and they had to remove that, but they kind of did it in a roundabout way. They created programs, built buildings, and then we had to go and recruit students. We should now be at somewhere around 12,000 students in order to break even with the buildings and the programs that were created. And so we're trying to get this thing up front and deal with it before it even gets off the ground by getting the kind of money we need to do what it needs to be done to uplift this great university.
And so when you're talking about, again, the level of resources, one of your demands is that potentially breaking apart from the A&M system. So would that mean having your own board of trustees, just like Texas Southern University?
Yes, so stay right there, Frank. They can hear. So Dr. A.I. Thomas wrote a think tank policy back in the early 2000s. And the goal is that we're going to pull all the brightest minds of Prairie View that produces productive people, and we're going to do a think tank, and we're going to look at the advantage and the disadvantage of staying in the A&M system. Okay? Got to look at the advantages and disadvantages of staying in the Texas A&M system. If we find out that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, that's when legal pursuit will start. And we'll put together a plan on how we're going to separate from the system.
The governor appoints the Board of Regents.
Correct.
Have y'all communicated to the governor in his office about appointing a Prairie View A&M graduate to the Board of Regents?
And so we have legislators like Boris Miles, Ron Reynolds, Jarvis Johnson, Senator Ross West trying to set up a meeting with the governor. This is, if you remember the plan, those of you that attended the town hall meeting, number one was to meet with the chancellor. And that was very important because the students was concerned that Ruth was not going to be at the commencement. So that was a win-win situation. Remember, number two was the state of Texas. That's the governor. And so we're working on it. Number three is the PUF fund, UTEMCO, okay? In which the board of directors are made up, the University of Texas and Texas A&M. And last but not least, that think tank to come up with the advantages and disadvantages and find out, does it make sense to stay under the system? Obviously,
Dr. Simmons, her letter, she called on Prairie View alumni and students to actually stand up and fight on behalf of the university. Moving forward, will you stay in contact with her to help shape and form this since she's no longer affiliated with the university?
So I want to share with everyone, Dr. Ruth, the truth is fully engaged. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's all I want to say. Dr. Ruth, the truth is fully engaged.
Folks, if you want to see the full news conference, simply go to the Black Star Network app or go to our YouTube channel. You can see the entire news conference. I'm going to quickly go to our panel to get their thoughts. Matt, I want to start with you. This is the thing that, look, they make us some demands. Ruth Simmons, in her letter, people actually read her letter, she told the folks, the alumni and the students, fight for your university to do what's right. And she has been very clear of what needs to happen. And so this is also something every graduate of a historically black college university that is a state school is going to have to understand, especially with Republicans controlling the legislature and the governor's mansion in the South, where many of our schools are located.
I'm with you. Lawsuit. I think they need to go further. I loved how they had it set up. I read the Constitution as they were talking, or as you were playing that clip. And in fact, the Constitution expressly says that that Board of Regents has to make just and equitable appropriations to both Texas A&M, Prairie View University, and then the rest of the schools in the Texas A&M University system. So I would hope that the genesis of this lawsuit would be, for years, you've not made just and equitable appropriations. And the reason they haven't is because the regents get to set the criteria for said appropriations. So they need to go further, in my opinion, by not only demanding an alumnus be on the board, but also a current student. When I was at Howard, we had the undergraduate trustee, and that person went in there and fought for the current students. So PV is currently in the trust of those current students, and I think they need to have representation there as well. I have no illusions that Greg Abbott and his cronies will either not listen or make it very difficult for this to happen. But in the state of Texas, as you well know, Roland, our public universities have a great deal of money that they pull from that PUF fund. And the idea that the Constitution expressly codifies PV as a, quote, first-class educational institution, but they're not getting first-class funding is per se a violation of the Constitution, if you ask me. And I hope that they get not only a board of regents for themselves for the purpose of local governance, but I hope that they get their fair share of the PUF fund so that a lot of those things that these brothers were asking for can come through.
Kelly, look, we saw what happened with the lawsuit in Maryland. It took 13 years, let's be real clear. But the bottom line is it resulted in a $577 million settlement. I mentioned the one in Mississippi. Look, sometimes you got to have a legal strategy plus a political strategy plus a protest strategy. Real quick.
Absolutely. I was actually about to allude to the Maryland lawsuit. It is necessary for HBCU's voices to be heard, especially in situations in which you have to get some kind of state funding in order to survive. And especially when there is evidence of, quite frankly, de jure segregation between the PWIs and the HBCUs in whatever system they are within. So in Maryland's case, even though they got that huge settlement, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually considerably lower than what they actually asked for. That would actually make the HBCUs in Maryland, there are 4 of them, equitable to the PWIs in the state. I hope that Texas has a more favorable outcome in that it is true equity between all the institutions within that university system, because at the end of the day, it's not about egos. It's not about, power and politics. It should be about the students who are attending these institutions and what quality of education they're going to receive at the end of the day.
Mike, about 30 seconds, go.
Hey, I'm down with PLP, political, legal, and protest. They all come together. And what a lot of the protesters have to understand is your protest and agenda can get pushed a lot farther and a lot more can get accomplished if you vote the right people in the office to protest against. This all works together.
All right, then. Matt, Michael, and Kelly, I appreciate that you've been on my panel today. Thank you so very much, folks. Coming up next, we'll hear from the filmmaker who's doing a film on Harry Belafonte, actor Glenn Turman, his longtime compatriot, actor Hill Harper, Reverend Dr. William Barber, and we'll hear the speech that Harry Belafonte gave to the Sigmas when they made him an honorary member. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, this is day 4 of our tribute to the great Harry Belafonte. Any of you saw his documentary, Sing Your Song? It is absolutely fascinating. Suzanne Rostock, she actually directed that documentary. She's working on a new film called Following Harry. She joins us right now along with the great actor. I should go over there and grab my cowboy hat, Glenn Turman, who joins us as well. So maybe I'll race over there and I'll grab my hat to make Glenn more comfortable, especially since I'm here in Houston. Glad to have both of you here. Suzanne, I will start with you. I remember when I was in Mr. B's office, and he gave me a copy of the DVD of Senior Song, and y'all did 800 hours of footage. Correct?
Correct. Well, yeah.
That is crazy.
But with my new film, I have even more. So, Harry has a very extensive, multi-layered, rich life. You can't put it into an hour or a couple of hours. It's hundreds and thousands of hours.
And see, I think that's what's great because again, I mean, typically when you've had lots of work, and this was when. So let's see. I guess when did Sing Your Song come out? Was that 2012?
2010. It opened Sundance in 2011, but it was finished in 2010.
Got it. So yeah. Right. So when I first sat down with him, it was 2012 when I interviewed him. The documentary had already been out. And so that was still 13 years of stuff. And he was still working. He was still moving. He was still going places, still being active. And so it just had to be. Just tell us, what was it like for you sitting there as y'all are shooting this and yes, following Harry and trying to keep up with this old man?
Well, it was hard. I took a lot of vitamins. I exercised, and it was hard to keep up with him. It was especially hard to keep up with all his ideas. He had a million ideas. And so, actually, at the end of Sing Your Song, Harry says, "What do you do now?" And so I had the idea to answer his question. And Harry invited me to share an office with him. So it became very easy to keep track of what he was up to because we would start and end our days together, basically. And so I said to him, can I just start following you? And can we just sit down and, over breakfast or late night dinners and just let you ruminate? Let me capture all your dreams. And let's see where all that goes. And and there we are. And so that was the genesis of the film.
Yeah. Glenn, Suzanne makes a great point there because I remember the numerous conversations. He would always tell me, "When are you taking me to lunch?" And so I would always hit him up, and I would go by the office. And one time we went to dinner, and he was talking about working. My God, who's the director who did Goodfellas? Escaping me. He was talking about doing something on King. Yes, on King Leopold with him. He was talking about it was always one thing after another. I mean, this man's mind was constantly going, constantly being busy.
Constantly.
Well,
I saw the funny delay, so I don't.
Glenn, go ahead. Suzanne, 1 second. Glenn, go ahead.
No, I was saying that you're absolutely right. He was his mind was constantly going. Ever since I knew him. I wish I had gotten to know him even better in the later years. I knew him from early years when I was a youngster, starting in the business on Broadway, and he was a constant. At the surroundings of the theater that we were performing at. As everyone knows, he and Sidney Poitier were very close. And so as a youngster, I was in their midst quite a bit and was able to take on the serious conversations and and importance of what their contribution to the movement was to be, And so from a youngster's point of view, I looked up to these men as the remarkable men that they were, as the important men that they were. There are certain people who come through our sphere, and lend more than you would ever imagine that they had or we needed to be lent to our dialogue. And those men, Harry and women, Harry was Belafonte was amongst those men, that lent to us, always lent the right to, always kept his shoulder to the wheel, as the saying goes.
You, of course, played Sidney Poitier's son in A Ragin' in the Sun. And for actors in Hollywood, but especially black men, when you talk about Sidney Poitier and you talk about Harry Belafonte, I mean, you literally, I think the phrase legends and icons and giants are greatly overused. Those two absolutely were legends, icons, and giants, Glenn.
Absolutely. I know my life is so enriched as a result of having had to spend time with men such as themselves,
Suzanne, as you followed Mr. B, it had to be just interesting to watch how people would approach him. I dare say, and again, when I think about legends, icons, giants, I think about how other entertainers, when they would approach Prince, when they would be in his presence, he was just on a whole different level. It was always fascinating to me to see how others approached Mr. B and approached Sidney Poitier. Did you pick up on that as you were following him around?
Well, Harry made himself so open and accessible. There was so much warmth coming off of him. So, people would initially approach with great awe, and then he would immediately crack a joke or, say something that would catch a person off guard, and then they were talking like old friends. So that, there was the initial awe, and then suddenly he was just a guy with a lot to offer, a lot of wisdom, and he he wasn't afraid to be confrontational. This whole idea of radical thinking, it would come up immediately. So he would immediately engage you in a more than a conversation, and I followed him because it is following Harry. I followed him all over in so many situations, starting with the death of Trayvon Martin, and he just was so available. He made himself so available to all people, but especially young people, to be there to help and to guide. And he learned from them also. He was very open. He didn't preach. He really discussed. It's always a very open discussion, which was so impressive and heartwarming to see.
Suzanne, Glenn, hold tight 1 second. Got to go pay some bills. We come back. We'll continue for day 4 of remembrance of the great Harry Belafonte, who passed away on Tuesday this week, folks, at the age of 96. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. We look at the history of emancipation around the world, including right here in the United States, the so-called end of slavery. Trust me, it's a history lesson that bears no resemblance to what you learned in school. Professor Chris Manjapra, author, scholar, amazing teacher, joins us to talk about his latest book, Black Ghost of Empire, The Death of Slavery and the Failure of Emancipation. He explains why the end of slavery was no end at all, but instead a collection of laws and policies designed to preserve the status quo of racial oppression.
The real problem is that the problems that slavery invented have continued over time. And what reparations are really about is saying, how do we really transform society, right? And stop racial violence, which is so endemic.
What we need to do about it on the next installment of The Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
I lost my daughter. I didn't know where she was. So I had to figure out how to survive, how to eat, how to live. I don't want to go into the details because she's here, first of all. She may not want me telling that story. But possession of her, the family broke down, fell apart. I was homeless. I had to figure out, I didn't have a manager or an agent or anybody anymore, and I'm the talent. So I got to figure out how to be the agent. I had to figure out, how does business work?
Glenn Turman, before we went to the break, Suzanne talked about how when Mr. B would meet certain folks, he would crack a joke. That was one of the things that I always loved. He had an absolute wonderful sense of humor and an unmistakable and undeniable laugh. Any remembrances of that part of Mr. B, somebody who was very serious in the work, but who also could be very funny?
Well, yes, he was always kidding around, you know. He had a very playful side to him, you know. I love the way his daughter Sherry and I would tease one another around him, and he would always join in on that fun. So yes, he was a father, you know. He was a well-rounded human being, you know, and I got a chance to see all of those sides, you know, and all of those sides, you know, he brought to his work, you know. His work was full. His work had all of the empathy that an artist should have. His music had all of the empathy, the sounds that made you perk up and lift your spirits, you know. And that was just because he was a well-rounded, grounded human being, you know. And he shared that openness with you if you were lucky enough to be in his presence.
Suzanne, there are some people who are one-dimensional. They may be a singer, they may be an actor, they may be an activist, but it's sort of indescribable. I remember when he passed away, I was interested in watching how all the different obits would frame him, and you literally could not say actor Harry Belafonte, activist Harry Belafonte, singer Harry Belafonte. I mean, there were so many different titles or job descriptions or life descriptions that you could literally apply. I can't think of anything other than Renaissance man.
Well, he's definitely a Renaissance man, but I think what he was able to do, and I don't really know of anybody else who could do this, is that he took all of who he was and put it together and created this beacon of hope. And so many of the people I spoke to, when they talk about what Harry did for them, is that they gave them hope to go on. You know, when the students from Parkland, after the shooting, came to speak with Harry, they came at a point where they had no hope. They felt that they weren't getting anywhere in making any change. And Matt Post, who was one of them, said, Harry, our movement was dying at that point, and Harry gave us the power and the hope to go on. He just could light a fire. His own light was so bright, and he would share it. He would pass it on to others. And I think that was his amazing gift. And that came from all that he was. So that's beyond being a Renaissance man. He was this beacon, this great light.
Glenn, Suzanne talked about, she mentioned Trayvon Martin. And I remember something there. The Dream Defenders, they were a group of young activists. They came about after the death of Trayvon Martin. Mr. B heard about them and was so moved by them, he literally went to Florida. They were sleeping overnight in the state capitol, and he stayed with them. And so it was, and so they were sitting here going, wait a minute, what in the heck is going on? And there were so many other politicians and other folks who were younger than Mr. B, who were not embracing of the Dream Defenders, but he loved that revolutionary aspect that they were willing to sleep in the Capitol, to stay overnight, to fight for change. And he wanted to show them someone of my stature is standing, or in this case, sleeping with you.
Well, what that is, that's the perfect definition of being in the trenches. Mr. B wasn't afraid to get into the trenches, to get his hands dirty from the very beginning, from the civil rights movement. He was one of the first celebrities to lend his name and publicly get into the trenches. You know, the marches, the March on Selma. You know. He was physically there, getting his hands dirty, so to speak, you know. So he comes from that school. It's not surprising that he would do such a thing, you know, with that young organization, because that's what he was about, you know. And sometimes to the jeopardy of his career, you know, the jeopardy and the safety of himself, you know. So he was not afraid to put his money where his mouth was, you know. He was straight up front with it.
Suzanne, final comment from you. I would love to know, as you were following him and walking with him, was there, first of all, I'm sure there were numerous things, but was there one thing that just stood out that made you go, wow, this man is unbelievable?
Well, there were a million things, but when he went down to Florida and stood in the center of the occupied state capitol, and he stood there and said, I'm here because you called. I'm here because I'm part of your history. I'm here to let you know that those who came before are here to help you, to guide you. And that was so, that kind of sums up everything to me. It was so heroic, it was so clear, and it was so powerful. And he was always there. He was always willing to be there, not to send a message, but to actually put himself in the center of it. And he did that in Ferguson and over again. And as you saw in Sing Your Song, he did that over and over again, you know, with We Are the World and with Selma and with the March on Washington, and on, right into the present, and he's still doing it. You know, it's hard to believe that he's physically not here, but all that he set into motion is in motion, and he's here alongside it. Yeah.
And on releasing following Harry.
Yeah. So
there are some people. There are some people who you're really going to miss. You know, some voices that we're really going to miss. I don't even think we understand how much we're going to miss for some of the voices that have left us in the not too long ago, recently. Harry, of course, being one of them. You know, Maya Angelou, one of those voices that you still will hear. You know, as we move forward as a people and a nation. You know, James Baldwin's voice still rings out. You know, Ruby Dee's voice still rings out. Harry Belafonte's voice will still ring out, and that's a voice that we're going to hear as long as we are here. You know.
Glenn Turman, Suzanne Bostock. First, Glenn Turman, I appreciate you joining us for this Harry Belafonte tribute. Thank you so very much, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, brother. Thank you so much. Always.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Suzanne, when is your film dropping? When are you going to be done?
Yeah, that's a question my producers ask me daily. It's still a work in process. We would like it to be done to have an effect on the next election. I think Harry's words, he's so powerful in it. It would be so great to wake people up for the next election. Soon.
Well, when it is done and you're ready to promote it, we will be ready to share it and promote it with our audience. Suzanne, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Folks, when Harry Belafonte became an honorary member of Phi Beta Sigma, he simply did not just accept that award. As always, he had a challenge for the Sigmas.
You with this honorary membership certificate, which reads, "This certificate presented to Harold G. Belafonte Jr. is a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity and as such entitled to all rights and privileges and cooperation of the fraternity. In witness whereof, the said fraternity has caused this certificate to be signed by its duly authorized officers and sealed with the seal of the fraternity on this 9th day of January." And by the way, the 9th of January is our founding date. Signed by our Executive Director, Darrell Anderson, and Jonathan Mason, International President. Congratulations, Mr. Belafonte.
Absolutely. All right. Let me get from this. That's what's fun. Except a black man on his knees.
All right. Welcome. All right, Mr. Roland. Thank you so much. And then, thank you so much. All right, and then we want to present to you our membership pin. We'll hold it for you. This is our honorary membership pin. And I would ask our International First Vice President if he would, only because my hands aren't steady, Mr. Belafonte.
I'll do that for you.
All right. right, he has been pinned. Wow. We have a couple of gifts for you. We can't bring anybody into the family, Mrs. Belafonte, without presenting some gifts. So what I want to present to you, this is our history book. The first history written in our fraternity in 54 years, and it was written by that gentleman right there, Dr. Anthony Asadullah Samad. Our history book is presented to you this day. I'm very proud of this. This is our Crescent magazine. It comes out 2 times a year. In this Crescent magazine, this particular issue, it talks about Phi Beta Sigma's role in the March on Washington and the 50th anniversary on Washington. And there are many other articles in there for you to read about this organization called Phi Beta Sigma. We present to you our Crescent magazine. All right, and I can give those to your wife because we would like to hear just a couple words from you, Mr. Belafonte. My brothers and my friends, I present to you the newest honorary member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Mr. Harry Belafonte.
All right, folks. So that's not the video I was looking for. So we'll work on that and have it Monday, because when Harry Belafonte actually spoke to them and challenged them in terms of when it comes to leadership of black men. So we'll get that video and find that for you. Got to go to break. We come back. We'll be joined by actor Hill Harper and later Reverend Hill Harper and Reverend Dr. William J. Barber in the next half hour. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, Dexter Jenkins is a faith-based financial mentor with more than 20 years in the financial services industry. He's passionate about helping families build generational wealth.
Even though I'm talking about things like prayer, I'm talking about things about reading the word, I'm talking about things like fellowship, I'm talking to members who are dealing with losing their houses, or I'm talking to members who, because of a lack of the handling their finances, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so what I'm finding is that they're not coming to church because they don't have a handle on their finances.
We're talking how to get wealthy through faith and our finances on the next Get Wealthy, right here, only on Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
If there was one area where Harry Belafonte really was always focused on, and that is the poor in this country. He wrote about that, growing up poor and his mom being poor, and how that had such an impact on her, and how it never ever really escaped her, even after he began to do well. It was an extraordinary story in his memoir. And this was just one of the things that he talked about. And so in a moment, we're going to talk with Reverend Dr. William Barber about that. Right now, I want to show you a clip from my interview with Mr. B, where he talked about his legacy. He talked about how he wanted to be remembered. This is from our 2017 conversation.
Why do you still do this? You love the French Riviera. You could be hanging out along the water, enjoying yourself, beaches and sun. Why come into this office? Why do this work? Why spend this time on the phone? Why still go to these meetings? Why still on the battlefield?
Because everything that has rewarded me in life, everything that has rewarded me in life comes out of that environment you just described. It comes out of this office, comes out of the song I sang, came out of the movie that I did, came out of the platform that I had. If I'd never been in this movement, I would never have gotten to know Nelson Mandela so intimately. Because what I brought to the table with Nelson, and certainly Madiba brought to me, was something that could only have been in the mix if we were both in the place we were in. When Dr. King called me up and said, I'd like to meet with you. You don't know me, but I have a request to make, and I'm coming to New York. I'd like to talk with you. And we met in the basement of the Abyssinia Baptist Church, and what should have taken, according to him, 20 minutes, took 4 hours. And when that meeting was over, I was in his parade forever. When I talked to A. Philip Randolph, when I talked to Eleanor Roosevelt, I can go on with a list of celebrity and the power of that century that touched my space, that said, you are worthy, that said, you help us. We delight in what you do. We are rewarded by it. Our causes are won because you brought a population to the table. Because when I did, sometimes I'd ask artists and they'd say no. I said, fine, let's make my next concert in behalf of Dr. King. And I would take time out in that concert to let Dr. King have the platform to speak on the issue. And most of the audiences would write me afterwards and say, we never expected it, but thank you for introducing us to Dr. King. Well, that's worth $1 million. And I am more rewarded by being in that space than I am being in the south of France, which incidentally, I do occasionally.
Years from now, there's going to be a kid who's going to read a book, who's going to hear Dale. There's going to be a kid who may come across a sculpture, a painting, a movie, and they may ask the question to their parents, who is this? Who is this man? What do you want that parent to say to their child who Harry Belafonte is?
I would say he was a great patriot. And that does not come by glibly. I am motivated to say I'm an American, but I find it very difficult to be an American. I find it difficult, like Jackie Robinson did in singing the Star Spangled Banner, because the images that come to mind is not Lincoln and Roosevelt and Washington. They helped a little. But what really made me committed to this country was that such noble men and women, Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, who felt the real sting of slavery, who fought against that and changed history, changed the paradigm. They saw that this country was worth investing in. When I was looking for where to go with my life, and I wanted to just flee from the scene of this mischief, I took a look at what happened to Paul Robeson, what happened to the great leaders of my time, and what they did, and I said, that's where I belong. That's what this is about. So that for me, When I think of being an American, I think about the America that we profess we want to be and have yet to achieve. And I genuinely believe that the only way America can achieve it is if I help America achieve it. If I don't step into the fray and make myself be heard and make the thoughts be felt, then I've failed my journey. I am satisfied with the men and women that I've served in my life, and those who have enlightened me and made me feel whole, made me feel worthy. They gave me, they anointed, they gave me approval.
Well, you know that we certainly appreciate all your work. I do as well. It's always good to chat with you and hear your perspective.
It's wonderful talking to you.
Joining us now, Reverend Dr. William J. Barber. Dr. Barber, glad to have you here. One of the things Harry Belafonte always fought for was the poor. They're doing the exact same thing. It really is a continuation of the work.
Yeah, it really is, Roland. I was sitting there listening to that interview that you just did with him, and it was so powerful that he said what really matters, what really made a difference in his life, and why he got up every morning. In my household, you had to know about my mother, who's a great musician. You had to know about Harry Belafonte, and you had to know about Nat King Cole. But Harry Belafonte never was satisfied with America saying one thing and being another. One of the quotes, Roland, that I live with is when he said, "Dissent is central to my understanding of democracy." Dissent is central. And he was always, didn't matter where he was always raising that critique. He raised it with black leadership. He raised it with white leadership. He raised it with the country. And he knew that we have to finish that vision of Dr. King of addressing these three evils of systemic racism, poverty and poverty and militarism. And now we like to add two to that: ecological devastation and the denial of health care, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism, because they all intersect. And so I think Roland has said that the way you honor people like him is through imitation. You don't just build monuments and museums and put that picture up. You go to work. You go to work every day for the cause of justice. And, you and I were talking the other day. A statistic just came out that said poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in America. Think about that. Higher than heart attack, strokes, and diabetes. And I was thinking about this. Harry Belafonte, if he was speaking on it, he would not mince words, and neither can we. And that means if we're true to his memory, we have to dissent from the kind of policies that exacerbate poverty, and we have to call it what it is: social, political, policy murder, where people are literally dying because of that which could be fixed, but we refuse to fix it with our public policy. And we've got to fix it, and we have to stay consistently in the arena of dissent until there's health care for everybody and living wages for everybody and basic care and concern for everybody. We can never give up what he said, dissent being central to our understanding of democracy.
And when we talk about this battle, we saw what took place today in North Carolina. Republicans now control the state Supreme Court 5-2. The hard-fought battles that you and others have engaged in to block voter ID, to stop voter suppression, to end partisan gerrymandering. Now Republicans want to institute that. North Carolina is split right now, 7-7 in the congressional delegation, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats. And Republicans, they want to change that. This is, again, the type of stuff that Harry Belafonte was fighting against with Dr. King. It continued through the 21st century, and it continues today. He is no longer with us physically. This is where, as you said, you thank someone, you appreciate their work by picking up that mantle and saying, we'll take it from here.
The first time I met Harry Belafonte, I was getting an award with the Advancement Project. It was in the middle of the Tomorrow Monday movement. And he said that he had heard about the movement. Don't turn around, don't stop. Next time was in his presence, I was invited by George Gresham to speak at Union 11, SEIU 1199. And he said, I was the keynote. And then I got there. I said, well, who's the opening? And he said, Harry Belafonte. I said, no. But in the backstage, Harry Belafonte said, I asked him to let you go be the keynote, because you need to tell folk about this movement. It's interesting that Monday, we re-announced that Murriel Monday is starting again in North Carolina. The Supreme Court did what they did in North Carolina today, a political coup d'etat. The Supreme Court in North Carolina has decided that it is going to be the enemy of democracy. That means we got to fight again. That means we're going to have to go to the federal court. That means we're going to have to mobilize. That means we're going to have to vote these folk out, because none of them won by more than 2% of the margin, or 2% of the votes. And the margin of victory, every one of these Republicans today, these extremists, I call them, who sought to roll back voting rights, roll back the rights of formerly disenfranchised, incarcerated people, and to make gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering, okay, even when it has a racial intent, that they're not winning by big margins. And the people who sat home could easily turn them out of office. The Supreme Court in North Carolina turned to be a progressive Supreme Court because of Murriel Monday. Murriel Monday is mobilizing. We turned out a vote. We sent a extremist governor home, put a more progressive governor, Roy Cooper, in, and we won the Supreme Court. Now, in 10 years, they have worked slowly and slyly to turn it back, but only by a little bit. And so what we've got to do now is go to work in the streets, in the federal courts, and at the ballot box, and turn out the kind of vote. You said North Carolina is 7-7 in its congressional representation. 2 years ago, it was 10-3. How did it get to be 7-7? Our voting rights cases that blocked the gerrymandering, that turned it around. So now they're reversing that. Well, the way we're going to have to reverse them is to get them out of office. And what we know, and Roland, you and I have talked about it a lot, in the South, if poor and low wealth voters mobilize, it would only take 19% in North Carolina, 7% in Georgia, 4% in Florida to overturn at-large elections and to decide those elections. Supreme Court justices in are all at large. They only have the margin by 2 votes. We get two changes, we're back to a majority. So we have to remember again what Harry Belafonte said: you don't sit down, you don't go home, you don't just rest. You get up every morning and you go to work. And dissent has to be at the center of our understanding of democracy, and fighting and struggling and working for justice has to be the way that we express that dissent. So even as monstrous, I want to say it like Frederick Douglass, as monstrous as this decision is today, I wonder if it might be one of the necessary link in the chain of events to the downfall of this entire extremism in this state and the South, because people can see it clearly now. And I wonder also, as we're going to be making a call, where's the business community now? We're going to be demanding, when they went after the LGBT community, you stood up, rightfully so. So is the business community going to stand up now when you see a Supreme Court basically say democracy has no home in North Carolina?
You're absolutely right. And again, it's one thing for people to sit here, be on social media and message boards commenting about how great and wonderful Harry Belafonte was. You don't praise him if you're not praising the work. That's the deal. And so, and not here physically, but the work continues. And so everybody must be engaged in the work. Final comment.
You know, both and I talk about faith a lot. Faith without works is dead. And Harry Belafonte knew that. You cannot claim a love for justice if you don't fight and struggle for justice. You cannot claim a love for love if you don't struggle and fight that love be realized. And so this is our moment. Our ancestors fought against worse than we're seeing. Let us not be the generation that has to fight less and wins less. We can win more. And so I'm hoping that all of these political coup d'etats going on in state capitals don't just make us angry, don't just sting us, but call us to the kind of mobilization and action in the streets, at the ballot box, in the courts, that can turn some of these things around once and for all. And I want to say on the national level, that is why, Roland, we can never say we can accept an infrastructure bill without having restoration of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Because everything that court did today, they couldn't do it if we had Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. So we cannot stand down on Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. We need it. We need it now. We need to keep demanding it. One vote is not enough. 2 Democratic senators and 50 Republicans standing against it. We cannot stand for that. And anybody that's running for office, for presidency or Senate, or anybody, we need to say that if you're not going to be serious about restoring Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act and passing living wages for working poor people, then you're not serious about lifting this country.
And for anybody who's watching in North Carolina, we would not be here today if Sherry Beasley had not lost by 400 votes in 2018.
That's it. That's 400. 400 votes. And 1.2 million people who stayed home. And then when she ran for the Senate, we did not see the kind of investment and commitment nationally and otherwise towards this election. So one of the things, Roland, I love what you keep doing. You keep pointing us to the power that we have. Some people just want to claim and complain and say, well, it's the Republicans' strength. No, 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 no. And Harry Belafonte would do this. He would say, yes, we must criticize the extremists. Yes, we must call the racists a racist. But you have to do your work. And we have enough folks sitting on the sidelines. If they would get on the front line, we could put some of these people on the back line.
Absolutely. Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, we appreciate it, Frat. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Doc.
Coming up next, another of my frat brothers, Hill Harper, actor and activist, will join us to celebrate Harry Belafonte. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Joining us right now for our Day 4 tribute to Harry Belafonte is actor Hill Harper, actor and activist as well. Hill, glad to see you, Frat. Earlier today, I was watching the video when Jamie Foxx got Entertainer of the Year for the NAACP Image Awards in 2013. And he stood up there and he said, you know what, I was going to talk about me and what I've done and my family. He said, but after standing there and watching Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte challenge us to do more, he said, I realized I have to do more. For anybody who's an actor or a singer today and they say, I can only just focus on the music, Harry Belafonte showed you can be rich, successful, well-known, and still put in the work outside of acting or singing.
Yeah, Brother Roland, he was so important to me. I became an actor because of people like Paul Robeson, people like Harry Belafonte, people like Sidney Poitier, people like Ossie Davis, that I had the pleasure of working with on Get on the Bus, who Spike Lee sat me next to him, and that was one of my first projects. And Ossie told me very directly, if you are going to be an artist, particularly a black artist, you have to be an activist and you have to be political. And when I had one of the greatest honors of my career was when I was asked to do a fireside chat with Mr. Belafonte, or let's call him King Harry, the real King Harry. And he told me the exact same thing that Ossie Davis had shared with me years before in my career. He, along with all those others we mentioned, represent the best of us. And, you know, in whatever small way I could, I have always felt that it's an incumbent upon us to use whatever platform we have to be political and to be activists and to be involved in bettering our community and bettering our country. Seeing that image that you just showed of him at the Lincoln Memorial speaking, or seeing him carry a picket sign, I'll tell you today, I carried a picket sign today because it was Workers' Memorial Day, and I was supporting the U.S. Postal Service workers from the AFL-CIO because they were protesting their working conditions. We have to do this work. And I'm so proud of you because you represent that through and through as well, owning your own distribution network, doing this work, speaking about it. And we're all part of the cut from the same cloth of King Harry and Mr. Belafonte. I couldn't hear you. I'm sure.
All right, sorry about that. Looks like I had a power shortage here, Harper. But we, of course, quickly improvised, so I had to hop on Skype. Hill, you were talking about, again, what we have to do, the work we have to do and put in. The one thing that was always awesome, he would challenge guys like you and Jesse Williams and Jamie Foxx. And then people will say, but I'm doing the work. He says, you can always do more.
So true. And we need to be challenged and we need to be held accountable, because the simple fact is that if you ask most people, are things getting better these days or are things getting worse, particularly for marginalized communities of color, where we are, where I'm right now. I'm driving around Detroit, and I look to my left, vacant building, boarded up, empty lot. Look to my right, same thing. So we all have to do more. And it's not just the athletes and the entertainers that he would challenge. He would challenge each and every one of us, because if you look at our voter participation, you look at how many people are actually running for offices. We are getting our booties kicked in terms of energy, the opposition, who are running people for library boards, PTAs, school boards, trustee boards. They're taking our books away because they're filling those positions, yet we turn out less. Now, I'm not blaming our community for that, but we have to be honest and hold each other accountable to what we're willing to do and how hard we're willing to lean in. And I'm proud that Harry Belafonte would challenge us.
All the times you met him, you talked to him, what's the one thing that stands out? That's final comment.
Well, you know, the main thing that stands out is his grandeur and his sense of purpose and gravitas, but his also ability to smile and have joy. I think sometimes we confuse the idea that you have to be deadly serious all the time. You know, think about people like greats like Harry Belafonte or Muhammad Ali. You know, they were quick with a wit, quick with a smile. And let me say this really quickly. The other thing that stands out to me is someone like Gina Belafonte, who, if you live your life with that type of legacy, what gets passed down to the next generation is the emulation of that. She is someone that I've been able to work with and have so much respect for how she approaches this same type of civil rights and human rights work. And I just pray that my son Pierce maybe sees in some small way, me and the work I do. And when I'm gone, he's going to pick up the mantle of human rights and civil rights in that type of work, just by viewing the work and being in close proximity to that. And so I guess that it's really the legacy is the big takeaway, and the fact that we all have to be like King Harry.
Indeed. Hill Harper, always good to see you, my brother. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate everything you do, Roland. Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, that is it for us. I'm headed to Los Angeles tomorrow, Carson, California, to host the Donnelly Jazz Festival. I'll be the co-host. I'm a co-host on the stage from 2 to 6. Bill Bellamy is 6 to 10. Looking forward to being there. Also, I'll be emceeing the George Lopez VIP party on Sunday, and then playing in his golf tournament on Monday. I'll have some video footage from that. And then, of course, Tuesday, I'll be kicking in with Bill Bellamy for his podcast in Los Angeles, and I'll be coming live from LA as well. So quite the busy weekend. Folks, thank you so very much. And shout out to the 3 students today who were gifted my scholarship at Jack Case High School in Houston. If you go to our Black Start Network app or our YouTube channel, you can actually see the live stream of that as well. Folks, that's it for us. We will continue our focus and celebrate Harry Belafonte this weekend with more content next weekend as well. So, folks, y'all take care. Have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you next week. Holla!
Mm-hmm.